We are live.
Hello, and welcome to the third event in our Diverse Perspectives in Digital Media and Design speaker series for the year 2023. To paraphrase James Baldwin, nothing can be changed until it is faced. This is certainly true of the inequities that have historically shaped the entertainment industry, both on screen and behind the scenes. This event is brought to you by UConn's Department of Digital Media and Design in partnership with UConn's Asian American Cultural Center. We'd like to begin today's event by acknowledging that the land on which we gather here in Storrs, Connecticut, is the territory of the Mohegan, Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Schaghticoke, Golden Hill Pagusset, Nipmuc, and Lenape peoples, who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. We thank them for their strength and resilience in protecting this land and aspire to uphold our responsibilities according to their example. Today's event will feature a presentation by our guest speaker, Jane Wu, who we're so pleased to have here today in person, followed by a question and answer session featuring questions not only from the audience here in the Bishop Center, but also you, our audience joining online. For our virtual audience, please take advantage of the YouTube chat box to submit questions for our guests, which we will try to answer during the discussion. I'm Clarissa Seglio, and I'm an associate professor of digital humanities, as well as the associate director of research for Greenhouse Studios, all of which means I'm a U.S. cultural historian who thinks about the ways in which visual and material cultures, particularly through the medium of museums and exhibition craft, shape our ideas about identity, inclusion, and exclusion. Here in the Digital Media and Design Department at the University of Connecticut, we're fairly young. We were founded in 2013 and have grown rapidly to over 350 undergraduate and graduate students and 25 full-time faculty. We have 7 undergraduate concentrations across the full range of digital media, from film production, animation, interactivity, business, and the humanities at both our Storrs and Stanford campuses. In our department, we value and celebrate our students' diverse backgrounds, and we support their development both as individuals and as professional media creators. This Diverse Perspectives in Digital Media and Design speaker series is one celebration of these shared values. Now, on to the real reason why you are here today with us in person and virtually. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest for today, who is Jane Wu, Creative Director at Hero for Hire, an Emmy-nominated full-service production animation studio. Jane is a first-generation Asian American director, artist, dog mom, and native New Yorker. She has worked in the motion design industry for over 13 years for commercial, broadcast, documentary films, and television shows, including What We Do in the Shadows, HBO's Our Flag Means Death, Emmy-nominated Women of the Movement, Mamie Till Mobley, and PBS documentary film, Rising Against Asian Hate. She is actively involved with Rise Up Animation as a mentor, and she has won several awards for her own animated short film, Book Girl and Cabinet Girl. And it is my pleasure to turn everything over to Jane.
Thank you so much for that introduction. That was very impressive. And thank you so much for having me, first of all. I'm gonna switch over to my presentation. So I am going to talk about the visionary leadership of minority women in animation. First of all, this is actually an illustration that I made for the Human Rights Watch for the Break the Chains campaign. So I think I'll skip the next slide just because I already got a really great introduction and Jane who? Jane Wu. And I would like to just dive right into my creative director reel so you're all familiar with my work. So that's my creative director reel that I made all this work at Hero for Hire. And I want to shout out to that team for bringing my designs, mood boards, and storyboards to life. So, on top of managing the team there to for these projects, I am very hands-on as well. And I do want to show off my general reel for all my other work, which is through my website. So that's a variety of my work that involves more design and animation and art direction. Let's move this off. So I'm just gonna, go from the top since I've already gotten questions about where I'm from and like what types of things I do. So just going from the start, my origin story. My parents are from a completely different world. In China, raised in poverty with different values than me. And it was very patriarchal. But one thing they did teach me was to persevere, even in the hardest times. And they never stopped working hard to put food on the table for our family. They lived through the Cultural Revolution in China. And this is actually photographs that I took in China on my first trip and this is in Punyu in Guangzhou. So I'm Cantonese speaker, and these are actually the place that where my mom grew up in, specifically the village. And it was a huge event if they ever got meat on the table. She always reminds me, if like for her birthday, she would just receive a red egg. So completely different worlds. And um, so I definitely had a lot of the first generation burdens from an immigrant family, to fulfill that American dream for them, and be that success coming to America. And we started off in a really tiny apartment in Chinatown with the five of us, one bedroom. So very, very different time back then. So growing up in America, I never felt like I really belonged anywhere. Not Chinese and not American. I was in between two worlds, from my parents' extremely different cultural background to, the American lifestyle. However, I did eventually become grateful to be raised in New York City, where no one really belonged anyway. Ultimately, it forced me to form my own tribe always. And this, I learned as I got older, is what it means to be an American. So, growing up in America, the narrative that was set by society of Asian women was not the best. They were seen as docile, subservient, exotic, and a sexual fetish. So some of these are screenshots from that documentary that I worked on, called Rising Against Asian Hate, One Day in March, which is a 1-hour documentary I creative directed the graphics for, about that exact topic, and sheds light to the 2021 Atlanta mass shootings of women of Asian descent. And the killer said these spas were a temptation he wanted to eliminate, and he had a sex addiction. So, this is things from mainstream media like Full Metal Jacket or Austin Powers, just always showcasing Asian women as these sexual accessories. And it impacted my self-image greatly. These were just things that were just seen as normal, and there weren't really anything else beyond this kind of portrayal of Asian women. And you can see, like in porn sites and Asian bride, like that's more common than anything else. So I instead got lost in stories, in graphic novels and animation, where female protagonists who looked like me were actual complex human beings with hopes, dreams, and fears, and went on epic adventures. Art quickly became my obsession. So this one in particular is called Battle Angel Alita. And I think anyone that knows me knows I love Battle Angel Alita. It's my catalyst for why I got into the arts industry. And the story for this one is, in particular, she starts as a lost girl with amnesia, and she quickly discovers she's actually a warrior, as she's trying to defend her friend that needed help. And she uses her strengths to protect the one she loves and is fiercely independent. And you can see in her eyes how, like how much character she has, how much conviction she has. And like she's depicted in this way where, she's got motivation. And then this one, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, is one of my favorite Studio Ghibli ever. And this is the first time I ever saw leadership where the female, where she leads with empathy for the people she rules, the animals, even the plants she wants to protect. And here she's seen hugging an insect that people misunderstood to be monsters. So these are the stories that I was really drawn to. And, as opposed to some of the other things that, and it really helped guide me to who I am now. So a little background on my professional history. My skills are my weapon. So I graduated as one of the top in my class and receiving job offers from professors and peers whom I've earned their respect along the way. I worked my way up, taking a staff gig to rise from a fresh graduate to art director, putting my time in to establish myself, and while proving to my parents I could make a living in this field. I paid off my massive loans, then quit to freelance in search for more creative freedom, trying to work on projects that might involve social justice themes while still making a decent salary. Then became who I am today, in a creative director role against all odds. I persevered and continued to sharpen my blade, building on my artistic skill sets, my passion of collaboration and leadership. But let's get one thing straight. Women, especially women of color in leadership roles, disproportionately face challenges of gender bias. All right, so the battle scars. It was not easy getting here. So, this is just one of many. This could go on. So some of the things that I face, challenging my authority, people that just don't want to listen, or working with people who are just not used to listening to someone who looks like me. And, there's also a lifetime of imposter syndrome because I never saw leaders who looked like me or any representation in mainstream media. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm always in a white male dominated space. And then seeing white men get promoted or paid more over those who are minority and qualified. Women getting harassed or taken a pass at or judged for their looks at work. So some really terrible things, and have burnt women out in the industry or discouraged from these depressing stories. So, all of these things that just people like me have to go through just for being a minority woman and, making it to this leadership role is extremely challenging. A little more on imposter syndrome. So I love this quote. Imposter syndrome is a feeling of inauthenticity, that I do not belong here. The world reminds me I have no business here. And this is taken from the book, The Purpose of Power by Alicia Garza. Alicia Garza is a co-founder of the Black Lives Matter movement. She overcomes her imposter syndrome, not by burying in self-help books, but by organizing and building a movement. And I want to mention that even Daniel Kwan, who won Oscars for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, a minority director, while holding one of the awards at the Oscars, says out loud in his acceptance speech that his imposter syndrome is at an all-time high. And this is just a common theme throughout for minorities in general. The good news is there is support out there. First, there are laws now that address gender bias or harassment in a workplace. Know your rights. It changes by state. Lots and lots of organizations out there that formed during this past decade to support women, people of color, the queer community in efforts to build equity in the workforce. And these are just some that I'm part of: Women in Animation, Hanimation, Asian Queens in Animation, Rise Up Animation, and tons of other groups that are not listed in here. On top of frequently posting job listings, they provide event gatherings, talks, mentorships, etc. And this just provides safe spaces for minority women to seek each other out for healing or strategizing or just joy. What radical leadership looks like. So this is, some of the things that I implement in my own leadership. Celebrating cultural differences and diversity as an intrinsic part of our everyday lives. Embracing the complexities of who we all are. Unafraid of not knowing everything. Listening and learning from others. Compassionate leadership. Accountability. Examining our indoctrinations of white supremacy. Creating systems that are just and working towards an equitable workplace. Allowing communities to write their own narratives and shape their own representation. I mean, this sounds very obvious to a minority woman because of all the things that have happened to us. So to us, it's second nature. And unfortunately and fortunately, these are things that just we are faced with in general. And how I continue to put myself in my work. I continue to push representation in my work. I choose to work on projects that help the movement, mentoring other minority women in the industry, supporting other minority women in the field by hiring them, recommending them to others for work, networking with them, and then, of course, support media made by the minority community. So as bleak as the beginning was, this towards the end of this presentation, I'm just really proud that nowadays we have so much representation. I mean, so much in that, compared to none. The recently Oscar awarded Everything Everywhere All at Once, with Michelle Yeoh winning Best Actress award for the first time an Asian American woman even winning an Oscar for Best Actress. And then, Crazy Rich Asians is also another monumental film. I watched that in the theaters and had a physical reaction because of how important that was to me. Seeing someone that looked like me on a big screen, again, not as a sexual accessory, and having thoughts and feelings in this rom-com. It was just so enlightening. And then, like Awkwafina also breaking down stereotypes, just being super funny. I actually went to school with her in high school in New York. And then obviously Domi Shi too. She's just who directed Turning Red. Again, like shedding light onto the Asian woman experience, and again, breaking barriers and blazing the trail for women in animation. And then, I recently worked on the Rising Against Asian Hate, the documentary that highlighted the Atlanta spot shootings that were, involving the women of Asian descent. So I want to share a few favorite shorts or just some work that I was involved in. And I want to start with Unexpectedly Red, which is a short film that I did on the side, no budget at all. This was just purely me and some coworkers at Nickelodeon doing this off work hours on top of the 40-hour work week passion project. So I was part of this anthology that's called Things Took a Turn, and they had a theme where you take familiar narratives in fairy tale and you put a twist to it. So this one is Red Riding Hood. I also want to mention I assembled a team of all women to animate this as well, and also a sound designer who was a woman. Thank you. I'm gonna play this. This one is a Wayfair project celebrating their 20th anniversary. And I'm really proud of this one and how much representation I was able to have in this one. I will play this.
There was a time that no matter where you shop for furniture, you drive around all day and keep seeing the same old thing. And that's when we thought, it's time to open up a whole new world of possibilities. At Wayfair, we've always believed that everyone deserves a home as unique as they are. Because no matter who you are, where you live, what you need, or what you love, we know how important it is to make your space your own. And we have everything you need. So get comfortable, get creative, get what works, get whatever you want. We've been so proud to be a part of your family and your community for all these years. And the future is brighter than ever. There's a world of possibilities out there, and we're just getting started.
Wayfair, you've got just what I need.
So this one, yeah, even though it's for Wayfair, it's still so important to see in commercials, in these other types of outside of film. These all subliminally impact us. I've done so many Mom in the Kitchen commercials, and I'm just so glad that these creators were very up for all these different types of people in here. And I just always want to challenge the white default in even commercial work. So my next one is at the Afrofuturism project, animated for ABC's Soul of a Nation, which is a TV series. Let's see if I can find it.
What do vibranium welding kings, space warrior princesses, and all black sci-fi fans have to do with progress?
No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
Everything. Afrofuturism unchains the mind.
That one I really enjoyed working because of just, the idea of using animation to free the mind, and Afrofuturism being a topic that also, like sci-fi adventure was the one that did it for me to free my mind. So this one was such a great project to be on, and yeah, I think that's about it for all of my presentation. Thank you all for listening. I'm gonna put it back to the first slide.
Thank you so much, Jane, for that wonderful presentation. We're now going to move to the question and answer session. How this works, particularly for those of you viewing at home or here in the room with us for the first time, our student co-hosts, who I'd like to welcome now, Nuruddin Musa and also Logan Tiernes. And Nuruddin is a first-year Master of Fine Arts student specializing in motion design and animation. The core of Dean's creative practice is driving impact, creating value, and solving design problems. The goal isn't just to create a fanciful piece of storytelling, but also one that will actually inform the target users and help solve problems through design. And you can find his work at the link we'll be dropping into the YouTube chat right now. Our second co-host is Logan Tiernes. Logan is a first-year student in the digital media and design program here at UConn and has a concentration in 3D animation. He is interested in creating images and designing media that will help companies to express their vision. And Jane, I'm going to have you swap places with me, and I think we'll go ahead. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the amazing presentation. First question would have for you. The career started around 13 years ago when you graduated from the Pratt Institute. And then you spoke about your motivation already, and it's about to angel and all of that. But the question is, when you decided to study fine arts, what was the general view of your parents or people around you about that particular choice, particularly 13 years ago when it wasn't a common choice?
Oh, it was definitely art was not seen as much of a financial financially viable option, and I was definitely scared of that too. The usual Asian parents of you need to be a doctor or a lawyer. And that also was what pushed me to have to prove myself even more. So, yeah, I mean, the motion design industry was still, I would say, in its infancy. And it was actually a professor at Pratt that inspired me to pursue that. And she was also a minority woman that taught After Effects, Kalika, and she was awesome. But she definitely was the one that was like, you can make a living and it's okay. Like, I'm doing great. I have a family. I'm paying for this place. Like, your life could look like this. And again, it's back then it was not as lucrative. So it was a huge risk that I took.
But it worked out well.
Huh?
It worked out well at the end of the day.
It worked out,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess just building off of that, and going into your early career and going into your later career into where you are now. How did some of like the early experiences sort of get you into your job and to the point where you're like, okay, this is actually gonna work. This is like a real thing. Like, I guess where was that like moment when you noticed that was gonna happen? And then building off that, how did your progress kind of get you to where you are?
I'd say my first staff job was when it was, more like it felt like a career to me. And then talking to my peers really helped. Just like understanding that, how much everybody made. And then also like that I could get there because I just started there. And then also, just seeing that it was doing really well, the company. So it made me feel more secure about, this career path. Did that answer your question?
So moving forward now, how would you describe a typical day in the life of Jane Wu?
Let's see. Like typical day would be, I would say first I would talk to my creative directors at the studio and we would bounce ideas, we would check in on each other. It's very collaborative and I love that. And then we would break up into our own teams.
Yeah.
And that's when I start getting into like the manager mindset and start like checking boxes, making sure things are being done. And if it requires for me to like be hands-on for a different project, I would start like doing a mood board or a storyboard or sketches or creative brief. So that's usually bouncing between that and also checking in on my team.
Okay, we have a question from one of our students in Stanford, Marlo Davila. I hope I'm saying that right. Marlo asked, what does it mean to represent yourself through your work? Feeling like you're neither from China nor the US. I feel like this is something I struggle with being a Latino in the US.
Oh, wow. Well, to explain a little more about not Chinese, not American. When I mean, obviously I have a Chinese shell. So immediately with Caucasian people, they see that I'm Asian, the black hair, the eyes, etc. And they just like, you're Chinese and you don't belong. Like, like it's just simple as that. I don't look like them. And then in China, when I went there for the first time, it was interesting and I had a culture shock because I felt like my values were too American. And even the way I dressed, they could just like see from a mile away, like she's American from the way I dressed. Yeah, so it's definitely just like different values for sure. Like China and Chinese people, they have more of a collective mindset and it's more about the family first. And again, like the patriarchal values as well. And then, yeah, so I never felt like I truly belong one or the other because of that. Like there's like certain cultural, like just even pop culture, like I didn't really, go fully one way or the other. So sometimes it was just like, I don't connect on that level with those groups of people. But I did in the end just figure that's kind of how most people feel in America. In the end, everyone's just trying to fit in and make their own way. And I ended up just really connecting with people who were huge nerds like me. Like I love board games and video games and animation. And I made lots of friends that way in the lifelong friends in my in those companies that I worked for. And what was your first question?
Yeah, so it says, what does it mean to represent yourself through your
Represent. Okay, yeah, he had two questions.
Yeah.
What does it mean to represent myself? So, as like anyone, if I get the opportunity to ever have an Asian woman in, an actual Asian woman in any of the projects, you know, that would be very easy for me. So, but you know, like any time where there's any kind of person of color, or you know, mostly just trying to inject that and challenge the white default more than anything else, just to have representation, and that's putting myself into the work, as in like I believe in like building equity and representation for people of color and women. And that's really what it comes down to. Like there's a social justice side of me that you know, I want to continue to push within my work, even if it doesn't like lends itself to
It's bringing it on a lighter note. And you've worked with different brands and you've worked on diverse projects. How has your experience been working on them, and which one specifically would you say is your favorite?
Favorite brand. I think
In terms of
the-
creative direction and personality.
yeah, I think the Wayfair one, yeah, that one is probably my favorite one. I mean, I love them all for different reasons. But just because the sheer amount and like the scale that it was at, and then again, like the amount of representation and that creative, the creative on that side, specifically our client, like they were so cool with us doing something like that. And in fact, they pushed for it. So that was really nice. Plus, I like their furniture too. Yeah, and they were really they gave us a lot of creative freedom. Like I think that's kind of one of the best things is like client giving you that creative freedom.
In the same vein, have you ever had a client that didn't allow that sort of creative freedom?
Have I what?
Have you ever had a client that didn't allow, that didn't give the team so much freedom in terms of
Did not.
yeah, that didn't give the team freedom in terms of creative direction? For example, you put in so much representation in a piece and the client comes back and wants the white default. Has that ever happened?
Yes. Yeah. And I would roll my eyes. Unfortunately, they're still a client and they're still paying us. Oh man. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, building off of that, yeah, it's frustrating when you don't get as much freedom, but when you do, how do you find the inspiration to make some of these that you made, like I guess inspiration wise, and just like I guess to impact people, like where do you find that sort of like gear to be able to make those?
Well, aside from, you know, like doing, like aside from consuming animation and film, I also read a lot of books from activists. I also really enjoy reading autobiographies from comedians who are minorities, just because it makes me feel like, you know, to laugh at life a little bit. Like Jimmy O Yang, and Ali Wong and Ronnie Chang and Mindy Kaling, and so, you know, a lot of the things that give me inspiration are still like focused on social justice, but in a different medium. And that kind of propels what I'd like to do. On top of, like film itself, like just watching movies.
All right, moving forward, you said you're not Chinese, you don't identify as American. How would you identify yourself as?
No, I would say I'm American. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just not Caucasian American, but I say American 100%.
All right.
Yeah, moving off of that, how have you been able to have such an amazing growth in your career, being in an industry that's dominated by males?
How can I like,
Just like achieve such amazing growth in your career.
I would credit to support that I received from my peers and the groups that I mentioned. Again, I think it just helps so much to seek that tribe of yours to help heal any trauma, and also, like go through and strategize and ultimately, yeah, like the network that you have will always be the one that help you, no matter what, like whether you're going through something that's terrible at work, or even if you lose your job, like ultimately the network is like a hive mind, like that really helps. Not even just other minority women, like just allies in general, like white allies, like yeah, I think there's definitely a big group now. Before it was not as prevalent or organized, but now it's like much more robust, and that's definitely helped me out a lot. I feel like now there's so much out there that help the younger generation. I think I would have taken more risks even if I had this support early on in my career. But yeah, I would credit it to like support from the groups or friends that I made along the way.
All right. Next question would be, I'm asking the tough questions. Have you ever experienced indiscrimination at work? And the second part will be, how do you overcome that?
Yeah, definitely have. So this is where you have to kind of weigh your options and see how bad it is. And if it's something that's coming from your peers, something from your superiors, something that's just like a microaggressive thing, or is it like a actual like aggressive thing that's very so it really depends. And I've definitely faced several degrees, and you just have to, again, like strategize, like try to maintain cool and see what your options are, and again, like know your laws if it's something that's like more severe, or like ultimately if nothing is there to help you, I quit. Like I like ultimately, if you're really good at what you do and you've gotten like established in this industry, and you have the respect of your peers, I think you'll find work. So I think I'm like a half full kind of person, so like again, the best way to just combat it is like come back full force. Like maybe you just need to cut your losses and go, kind of thing, or if you can protect yourself and deal with it, I would do it. But yeah.
Thank you.
And my next question is, do you feel that being Asian American has any necessary advantages or disadvantages in the workplace?
I would say disadvantage for a leadership role. I still get comments like, "Are you the designer?" And I'm like, "No, I'm the creative director." So, it's definitely a disadvantage in a leadership role. I would say in a production artist role, like there is the model minority myth that, I think people like to hire Asian people for that. So in a way, but it's really not. In the end, it's not, because it's just pitting other racial groups against each other with that. It's very harmful. And then it also is terrible for like the elderly community who are suffering and not getting any light, for the Asians, Asian American in that light. So yeah, I would say in general, overall disadvantage.
So in terms of working on motion design projects, do you have a moral compass on certain projects?
Sorry.
Do you have a moral compass on certain projects? Are there certain projects you would never work on? And when you are on that kind of project, how do you manage that?
Well, in general, I try to work for a company that already aligns with my beliefs. And I turn down jobs that don't. And usually because I create work like this, it attracts work like that as well. So, the more you put into it, and put out there that you do this type of work, the more like people want to hire you for that. So that's kind of been my personal branding. Like, it's actually, like I try to put this up, and I don't put the other work up. And hopefully that just attracts the type of people that I want to be around, that I want to work for, that would hire me, and etc. And so far it's been working out.
Yeah, my next question is, have you ever had like any really big setbacks or anything you felt like was holding you back? And do you have any advice for how to overcome it?
I would say I don't know if this is a setback, but like I wish I took more risks as when I was younger. Because I had the first generation burden of establishing myself, having a really good salary. I didn't do that as much. And I also, did not want to leave New York because I just wanted to, stay here for my mom, who doesn't speak any English, and it's my second job to take care of her. And, it just became more about crafting the dream job for me, which, it became like more about these other aspects of life, like financially stable, my mom. But if I didn't have those things, like if I did have more financial stability and those privileges, I would have taken more risks for sure. Like, I feel like that's the one thing that I wish I did more of earlier on. Now I take, like, I'm a little more risky.
All right. My next question would be, what would you recommend in this field? What advice would you give people going, the seniors, for example, in the room, going into the field? What advice would you give them?
I would say choose one thing, get really good at it, and earn the respect of your peers and the people in the industry. And just like, go through the motion of putting your time in, and whatever, even if you don't know what you want, like try it out, take risks and believe in yourself. And I think, things will really work out if you keep the course, because no matter what, if you're really good at that, what you do, people will be attracted to you, like always want to hire you no matter what. And it's okay also if you decide to change, because there's also seasons in your life, like suddenly something happened in your life that you want to focus on something else, and that's okay. So I would say that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you've had jobs that you worked with, like with TV shows that have been nominated for the Emmys, and you've won other awards. And that's all stuff that's like really easy to like get really high on. And like do you have any advice for like when you have those awesome things happen, like you don't get too excited about it, and when bad things happen, you don't get too low?
It's I would, for me, mostly focusing on my team is actually what brings most joy for me. Getting to successfully have everyone work in harmony and also creating this wonderful product. Honestly, that's more interesting and rewarding to me than awards. I don't really care as much. It's like a nice byproduct than anything else. Because I am more of like a person that loves to create, like collaborate. Like I'm really passionate about, making all of us just like produce something cool, something like worth watching or something like that, and having impact. That would be a huge plus too, if like the paper would had like impact on moving the needle in our society.
For our final question, what would you recommend to people in the field pursue a full-time job or freelance?
What do I recommend? Well, I can say that it worked out for me starting off staff. Just to, I mean, it kind of depends on what you're going for. For me, I was trying to work up the chain into a more managerial role. So I definitely wanted to work my way up with the titles.
Yeah.
So staff job made the most sense to me to like establish myself within the titles. And then, but if you're a specialist, I think freelancing is good because then you can, well, first you should just get really good at your craft. And then it's nice to just bounce around and learn from other artists. And in that aspect, I think, it just depends like which you're going for.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank
Can
you.
everyone please give a round of applause?
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, that was done. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, and
Thank you also.
it's perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Live streamed, but next Tuesday, Domi Shi of Pixar and Turning Red fame will be here on campus, sponsored by the Asian American Cultural Center for Asian American Heritage Month, and DMD Digital Media and Design is proud to be a co-sponsor of that event as well. I would like to again thank our very special guest, Jane Wu, and I invite you to check out her website and her work in greater detail. My thanks to Dean and Logan, our co-hosts for the evening, and to our audience here and online. Please click on the link you'll find in YouTube chat or on our DMD UConn YouTube channel for more information about upcoming guests in our diverse speakers series. And again, thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you, Jade.
Thank you.